Let me be brutally honest with you about what's really happening when you both stop contacting each other. You think you're in a strategic standoff. You think this silence is a game where whoever texts first loses, but here's what most dating coaches won't tell you. There's something this mutual silence is revealing that has nothing to do with who texts first, and most men completely miss it. I know you're sitting there right now, analyzing every little thing. Did she view my story? Is she posting more than usual? Is she trying to make me jealous? You're treating this like a chess match, waiting for the right move, but what if you're playing the wrong game entirely? Here's the truth. This silence isn't what you think it is, and by the end of this video, you're going to understand what it's actually testing, not your patience, not your willpower, something way more important that determines whether you should even be pursuing this in the first place. I'm going to break down what this mutual silence is really revealing, the 3 stages both of you go through, and how to read the signs that tell you the truth about where this is actually headed. Now, before we get into this, I need to be clear about something. This video isn't about manipulation tactics or playing games to get her back. That's not what we're doing here. This is about understanding the actual psychology behind mutual silence so you can make better decisions, not worse ones. Because here's the truth, most of the advice out there tells you to stay silent to make her chase under the use no contact as a weapon, but that completely misses the point of what this silence is actually revealing. I'm going to show you what's really happening when you both go quiet, not so you can play games better, but so you can understand what this dynamic is telling you about her, about you, and about whether this connection is even worth saving. So let's talk about what's actually happening right now. You stopped texting her. She stopped texting you, and now you're both in this weird standoff where neither of you is making the first move. And if you're like most men, you're treating this like a strategy. You're thinking if I just hold out long enough, she'll realize she misses me and come back. You're checking her social media, you're analyzing her stories, you're looking for signs that she's thinking about you. But here's what you don't realize. While you're sitting there playing this waiting game, you're not actually moving forward. You're stuck. You're in a psychological prison where you've convinced yourself that silence equals power, but really you're just frozen in place hoping she makes the next move. And the worst part, she can sense that. Women have this radar for detecting when a man's silence is strategic versus when it's genuine. When you're sitting there secretly obsessed, checking your phone every hour, analyzing every little signal that energy comes through, even in your silence, that's the trap most men fall into. They think they're being strong by not reaching out, but internally they're still completely attached to the outcome. They're not silent because they've moved on. They're silent because they're scared of looking weak. And that's not power. That's just fear with better PR. So here's what I'm going to break down for you. First, I'm going to show you the 3 psychological stages that both of you go through during mutual silence, what's happening in her mind at each stage and what should be happening in yours. Then I'm going to show you how to read the signs that tell you whether this silence is bringing you closer or pushing you apart. And finally, I'm going to show you what this silence is actually revealing about compatibility, something most men completely miss until it's too late. Let's start with what mutual silence actually means, because most men get this completely wrong from the beginning. When you both stop contacting each other, you're not in a stalemate, you're in a psychological auction, and what's being auctioned off is attention. Her attention is the currency you want. Your attention is the currency she might want, and whoever values the other person's attention more is the one who's going to break first. But here's the key distinction most men miss. It's not about who texts first. It's about who genuinely doesn't need the response. Think about it like this. If you send a text and you're anxiously waiting for her reply, checking your phone every 5 minutes, getting frustrated when she doesn't respond, that's a need. That's dependency. And women can sense that energy even before you send the message. It leaks through in your word choice, your timing, your tone. But if you're living your life genuinely invested in your purpose, your goals, your social circle, and you happen to send a message without being attached to when or if she responds, that's indifference, real indifference. Not the fake kind, where you're pretending not to care while secretly obsessing. So mutual silence does 2 things. First, it reveals who's more invested. The person who's constantly thinking about the other person, analyzing their behavior, waiting for them to reach out, that person is more invested. The person who's genuinely living their life and not thinking about it much, they're less invested. Second, mutual silence forces both of you to confront a simple question. Do I actually miss this person, or do I just miss the attention they gave me? Do I want them specifically, or do I just want to feel wanted? And here's where it gets uncomfortable for most men. Because when you're honest with yourself during this silence, you might realize you don't actually miss her that much. You just miss the validation. You miss having someone to text. You miss feeling desired. But her specifically? Maybe not as much as you thought. That realization is where the flip begins. So let's break down the 3 stages both of you go through when the silence starts. Stage 1 is what I call the waiting game. This is usually the first 3 to 7 days after you both stop reaching out. During stage 1, here's what's happening on her end. She's in a mild curiosity phase. She's wondering why you haven't texted. She might check your social media once or twice. She's mildly curious, but she's also protecting her ego. She's telling herself, I'm not going to chase him. If he wants to talk, he knows where to find me. And on your end, if you're doing this right, you should not be waiting. You should not be counting the days. You should not be checking if she viewed your story or analyzing her posts for hidden messages about you. Because the moment you start doing that, you've already lost stage 1. Stage 1 is won by the person who genuinely redirects their attention. And I mean genuinely, not performatively. You're not staying silent to make her miss you. You're staying silent because you're actually busy living your life. Here's what that looks like practically. You delete the conversation thread from your main screen so you're not tempted to reread old messages. You invest heavily in the gym, your career, your friendships. You pursue new romantic options, not to make her jealous, but because you're genuinely exploring your options. You're building a life that's full and satisfying with or without her in it. And here's the critical part. You're doing this not because you're trying to trigger her interest. You're doing it because you're genuinely testing yourself. You're asking, can I be happy without her? Can I build something meaningful without her validation? Because if you can't, then you were never operating from a position of power to begin with. You were operating from a position of need, and women don't respect need, they respect self-sufficiency. So stage 1 is about reclaiming your attention, not strategically, but authentically. And when you do that, something interesting starts to happen in her psychology, which brings us to stage 2. Stage 2 usually happens somewhere between day 7 and day 21, and this is where things get interesting, because this is when she starts to feel your actual absence. Here's what's happening psychologically. Her brain's reward system was conditioned to expect validation from you. Your attention, your messages, your interest, that was giving her a dopamine hit. But now that source has completely dried up. And when dopamine drops, her brain starts to notice. It creates a subtle feeling of something missing. Now, she's not going to consciously think, I miss him so much. It's more subtle than that. She might find herself wondering what you're up to. She might check your profile more frequently. She might post something hoping you'll see it. These are breadcrumbs. She's testing to see if you're still paying attention. And here's where most men screw this up completely. They see the breadcrumbs, a like on an old photo, a view on their story, a vague post that could be about them, and they immediately interpret it as an invitation to re-engage. So they respond with enthusiasm. They reach out. They think she's finally missing me. But that's not what's happening. She's not inviting you back. She's checking if you're still there. She's checking if you're still waiting. And the moment you respond with any kind of eagerness, you confirm to her that yes, you were waiting. You were never genuinely indifferent. You were just performing silence. And that kills whatever curiosity she was developing. So what do you do in stage 2? You acknowledge the breadcrumb with minimal energy. If she views your story, let her. Don't view hers back immediately. If she likes an old photo, don't rush to like hers. If she posts something cryptic, don't take the bait and comment. You treat her breadcrumbs the same way you'd treat a casual acquaintance, showing mild interest, polite acknowledgement, nothing more. Because you're genuinely still living your life. You're genuinely still exploring other options. You're genuinely still building something that doesn't require her validation, and that's what creates the actual shift in power. Because now she's starting to realize you might not be waiting anymore, and that's when stage 3 arrives. Stage 3 is the decision point. This is where one person breaks the silence with a real attempt to reconnect, or both of you accept that it's over. Now, if she reaches out during stage 3, here's what you need to understand. There are 2 possible reasons why she's doing it. The first reason, she genuinely misses you. She's realized during this silence that she values your presence in her life. She's thought about what you brought to the table, and she wants to explore reconnecting. The second reason, her ego needs validation. She needs to know that you're still interested. She needs to confirm that you were sitting there waiting for her. It's not about wanting you back. It's about needing to feel desired. And here's how you tell the difference. Look at the effort level in her message. If she's reaching out with genuine interest, asking how you've been, showing curiosity about your life, suggesting plans to meet up, that's real investment. That's her taking a risk to reconnect. But if she's reaching out with a low-effort breadcrumb, a hey text, a vague question, a meme with no context, that's ego validation. She's testing if you'll jump at the opportunity to re-engage. So here's what you do. If she reaches out with genuine effort, you match her energy. You're warm but not desperate. You engage but you don't reward the silence with enthusiasm. You treat it like you would treat anyone who went quiet for weeks and now wants to reconnect with friendly skepticism. But if she reaches out with a low-effort breadcrumb, here's the move. You stay silent. You don't reward low effort with high effort. You don't respond to a hey text like it's an invitation to pour your heart out. You let that message sit, because you're genuinely testing her investment level. And here's what happens when you do that. If she was genuinely interested, she'll try again with more effort. But if it was just ego validation, she'll move on. And that tells you everything you need to know. But what if she never reaches out at all? What if the silence just continues indefinitely? That's actually the most important scenario. And that's what we need to talk about next. Because here's what most men don't want to hear. If she can go weeks or months in total silence and feel completely fine about it, that's not a test. That's a statement. High-value women don't play extended silence games with men they're genuinely interested in. They just don't. When a woman truly values a man, when she's genuinely attracted to him, when she sees real potential, she doesn't let silence stretch on indefinitely. She communicates, she reaches out, she makes her interest known. Sure, she might pull back to see if you'll pursue. She might test your confidence, but we're talking days, not weeks. Maybe a week at most. But multiple weeks of total silence where she seems perfectly content? That's not a test. That's indifference. And here's the uncomfortable truth. You've been treating this silence like a tactical game to win, but what if the silence is actually revealing that she was never the right person in the first place? Think about it. Do you want to be with someone who's comfortable not talking to you for weeks at a time? Do you want a relationship where you constantly have to play psychological games just to maintain her interest? Is that the kind of dynamic you're trying to build? Because here's what I've noticed. The men who win the silence game, who get the girl to come back, often realize a few months later that they don't actually want her anymore, because they've spent all this time focused on the game, on the tactics, on making her chase, and they never stop to ask, is she actually worth chasing in the first place? So let me reframe this entire situation for you. Mutual silence isn't about who has more power. It's not about who texts first or who caves first. It's about compatibility. It's about whether her behavior during uncertainty matches the kind of partner you actually want. Do you want someone who goes silent when things get uncomfortable? Do you want someone who plays games instead of communicating? Do you want someone who can go weeks without talking to you and feel perfectly fine? Or do you want someone who fights for the connection? Someone who communicates even when it's awkward? Someone who doesn't let silence replace conversation? That's the real question this silence is asking you. And that brings me to something I need to say that might be hard to hear, but it's the truth that's going to set you free. If she never comes back after this mutual silence, she didn't reject you, she did you a favor. She removed herself from your life before you wasted months or years on someone who was never genuinely invested. She showed you exactly who she is, someone who can let connections die without a fight, someone who values peace over connection, someone who would rather go silent than communicate through discomfort. And here's what I want you to understand. The men who truly win aren't the ones who get her back. They're the ones who realize they dodged a bullet. Because think about what you were chasing. You were chasing someone who could go weeks without talking to you. Someone who was comfortable with extended silence. Someone who made you question your worth just by their absence. Is that really winning? This isn't about being cynical. This isn't about giving up on love. This is about recognizing that real connection doesn't survive on silence. It survives on communication, effort, and mutual investment. If she's someone who genuinely valued you, she wouldn't let the silence go on indefinitely. She would fight against it. She would reach out. She would communicate. And if she doesn't, then she's not the high-value woman you thought she was. And the real win is discovering that now instead of 3 years from now when you're even more invested. So let me ask you, have you been in this situation? How long has the mutual silence been going on? And more importantly, what have you learned about yourself during this period? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one because these situations are never black and white. Sometimes you need specific guidance for your specific circumstances, and I want to hear what stage you think you're in right now. Because here's what this channel is really about. It's not just about understanding women, it's about building men who don't need validation from anyone. Men who are grounded in their own worth. Men who can look at a situation clearly and make decisions from a place of strength, not desperation. And remember, the game flips when you stop playing it. When her silence no longer affects your peace, you've already won. Not because you got her back, but because you realized your worth isn't determined by whether she texts you back. You're not waiting anymore, you're living. And that's what makes you unforgettable. Not to her, but to the right person who will actually fight to be in your life.